Hi, welcome to Dare to Lead. This is a program overview, and we'll also take a look at options for implementation of the Dare to Lead program, if that's something you're interested in. My name is Leslie Mizerek. I'm the co-founder of GetCourageous.com, as well as a certified Dare to Lead facilitator. On the team is Jess Mizerek, co-founder of GetCourageous.com and executive coach, along with Leora Kirby, an executive coach. We all do a lot of work in Dare to Lead, and super happy to be here. So first of all, before we get started, in Dare to Lead, we use a lot of permission slips, and it's a great way to set our clear intentions, give ourselves permission to feel or act in a certain way during challenging situations or experiences. So what do you need to give yourself permission to do or not do while you're watching this overview? If you'd like, it's a great time to take a pause, put this on pause, and fill out your permission slip using a Post-it note or whatever you like. You could even text yourself. Then when you're done, hit play again. So what is Dare to Lead? Program Dare to Lead is based on a book that Brene Brown published in 2018. Brene Brown is a research professor at the University of Houston. Has spent the last couple of decades really studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. Dare to Lead builds upon her previous work and presents some actionable strategies and practices to help cultivate braver, more daring leadership in organizations. Some of the key concepts that we'll talk about are rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values, braving trust, and learning to rise. Dr. Brown's approach to leadership is very human-centric and emphasizes the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of connection, and the importance of courage. Dare to Lead offers concrete tools and exercises that helps leaders cultivate these skills in themselves as well as in their teams. When we dare to lead, we don't pretend to have the right answers. We stay curious. We ask the right questions. We don't see power as finite. We don't hoard it. We realize that power is infinite and we share it with others. We don't avoid difficult conversations. We lean in with vulnerability when it's really necessary to do good work. But daring leadership in a culture defined by scarcity, fear, uncertainty really requires skill building that makes you dig deep. The irony is that we're not choosing to invest in developing the hearts and minds of leaders at the exact same time as we're scrambling to figure out what we have to do. What can we do better? We need to think about empathy, connection, and courage to start. There is some research that Dr. Brown has done, and she's come up with 10 behaviors and cultural issues that leaders have identified as getting in the way in our organizations across the world. We're going to roll through each of these. As you see them, make a note, whether you text yourself, write it on a piece of paper or whatever, of the ones that are most significant barriers to courageous leadership for yourself or for your organization. In Dare to Lead, there are 10, as I said. The first one is we avoid tough conversations, including giving honest and productive feedback. Feedback is how we grow. We as leaders, how our team grows. Difficult conversations need to be had, they need to be honest, and they need to be open. Another barrier is rather than spending a reasonable amount of time proactively acknowledging and addressing the fears and feelings that show up during times of change and upheaval in organizations, we spend an unreasonable amount of time managing these problematic behaviors. And let's just be real. Change is everywhere. It's happening constantly. This is a big one. Diminishing trust caused by a lack of connection and empathy is another large one. Another barrier is not enough people are taking smart risks or sharing bold ideas to meet changing and challenging demands and that insatiable need for innovation. Number 5, we get stuck and defined by our setbacks, by our fails, our falls, our disappointments. So instead of spending resources on cleanup to ensure that consumers, stakeholders, or internal processes are made whole, we are spending so much time and energy reassuring team members who are really questioning their contribution and their value. Too much shame and blame is another barrier. There's not enough accountability and learning. This is our opportunity to get really curious. Number 7, people are opting out of those vital conversations about diversity and inclusivity because the fear of looking wrong, saying something wrong, or being wrong. Choosing our own comfort over these hard conversations is really the epitome of privilege, and it corrodes trust and moves us away from meaningful and lasting conversations. When something goes wrong, individuals and teams are rushing to ineffective and unsustainable solutions rather than staying in the messy middle of problem identification and solving. When we fix the wrong thing for the wrong reason, the same problems continue to surface. It's costly and humanly demoralizing. Number 9, organizational values are gauzy. That means they're unclear, and they're assessed in terms of aspirations rather than actual behaviors that can be taught, measured, and evaluated. If we're going to have values, we need to understand what they are, how they're defined, and how we can operationalize and implement those. And then lastly, perfectionism. Any perfectionists out there? Perfectionism and fear are keeping people from learning and growing. So those are our 10 barriers. As you look at those 10 barriers, which one stood out the most for you? Which is the most significant or the biggest problem in your organization? So when we think about the word leadership, what comes to mind for you? This is a great time to pause and maybe they answer that question for yourself. Hit play when you're ready to move forward. Some of the words we've heard in our multiple Dare to Lead programs are wisdom, inspiration, trustworthiness, drive, power, knowledge, credibility, integrity, honesty, fairness, active listening, empathy, that emotional intelligence, and visionary. Just a few. But what does that mean to you? In Dare to Lead, leadership is really about the courage to be vulnerable, to be authentic and empathic. It's not about winning or losing. It's about the courage to really show up when you can't predict or control the outcome. And the definition that we use for leader is a leader is anyone at any level who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. And we feel like you can't get to courage without rumbling with vulnerability. That self-awareness and self-love matter because that's all we really have. And courage is contagious. If you've seen any of Dr. Brown's work, especially her earlier TED Talk, she did a TEDx talk on vulnerability. And, the cheap seats started putting all sorts of feedback on the YouTube and the TED site and social media and saying things that some of them weren't really nice. Some of them were amazingly nice. And then she happened to run into this quote. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails daring greatly. Brene says she is getting in the arena and she doesn't want to hear from people who aren't in the arena with her or in their own arena. There are 4 teachable skills, teachable, measurable, observable skills in Dare to Lead. They are rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values, braving trust, and learning to rise. I'm going to take you through each of these briefly. The first one, rumbling with vulnerability. True leadership requires vulnerability. It's about having tough conversations, owning our mistakes, and really learning to be present when it's uncomfortable. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's a strength. It's taking off our self-protecting armor to have the courage to let our guard down, the courage to be seen, the courage to accept what we don't know, and the courage to acknowledge mistakes, and really the ultimate belief that we're not perfect and that we are a work in progress. Living into our values. It's not enough just to list our values. This is around your personal values, but the same can be very true for our organizational values. Leaders need to identify with their values and understand what they look like in action, ensure that they're integrated into their own everyday behaviors. Values are those internal drivers that inform our decisions, our actions, our behaviors. It comes down to understanding and operationalizing our values. For example, what are the actions that represent our values? How can we ensure that they're integrated into our everyday behavior? This is one of the most interesting exercises, and it's always fun to do this with people who have really not thought about what their values are, or haven't focused on it, or don't really know what values mean to them. And I always love this exercise when people can dive into this, whether it's in the Dare to Lead program or it's in individual executive coaching, because we can learn so much when we start to dig into who we are and how we want to be seen and how we make decisions, those sorts of things. And then we can take that and we can start to operationalize it. The next one is braving trust. Trust is foundational in leadership and teams. Dr. Brown presents the specific acronym called BRAVING. I call it the Braving Inventory, really to break down the anatomy of trust. The Braving Inventory builds trust, and it stands for boundaries, reliability, accountability, being the vault, integrity, being in non-judgment, and in generosity. Understanding that these are components of trust and how they work can really help us to understand when trust is low in our own orbit, so to speak, as well as in our organization. Understand why we are not trusted or why we might not trust others. And then the fourth skill is learning to rise. Learning to rise is really about resilience. Leaders inevitably are going to face setbacks and failures. Learning to rise means understanding how to reset and rebound from our challenges. Learning to rise is understanding those stories we tell ourselves, and man, do we tell ourselves some stories that are often fiction-laden, and it helps us to kind of work through these and rewrite these wild stories. And that's all about resilience. So this brings us to the last piece of the program, is the implementation piece. How can I leverage Dare to Lead? Well, there are multiple ways to do so. First of all, using the book. Depending on budgets and organizations, you could have a book club in your organization, and you can do it in 4 to 6 sessions, and you could pick someone in your organization to lead it, so self-led, or you can hire a facilitator to help you lead a book club. The resources are all online in the Dare to Lead Hub, and there are video resources, there's a book study guide, there's a glossary, graphics, all sorts of really good information. The next would be a facilitated program, whether it's virtual or on-site, or even retreat style, off-site. And we do it in 2 or 3 day programs. We do it in single day sessions. We do keynotes. We do all sorts of different ways depending on what the client is looking for, whether they want the full program, they want a piece of the program, or they want it as a keynote. If working with us is not your jam, that's okay. There are certified facilitators across the globe, and there is a Dare to Lead hub, which has all the information for you to access all of the facilitators. And then at getcourageous.com, we offer Dare to Lead coaching. We do group coaching and one-to-one coaching, depending on the budget as well as the need of your organization. We can do it individually, whether we haven't delivered a Dare to Lead program, or we can do it as a follow-on based on a Dare to Lead program. You can take Dare to Lead and align it to your other programs in your organization, or build it into your learning and development plan. I find it most effective when it becomes the way we do things in an organization, because this is a program all about self-leadership, how we lead ourselves. And if we can understand how to lead ourselves more effectively, we can create a common language, we can bring people together, we can create trust. Does it solve every problem? No, it does not. Let's just be real. But it is a phenomenal program to either put into or start your leadership. We use it in high potential programs, mentoring programs. We'll weave it into a current plan. We've used it to kickstart leadership development. We've included it with DEI programs, lots of executive retreats, and as well as culture alignment. So what's next for you? How would you like to experience Dare to Lead for yourself or your organization? If there's something we can help you with, be sure to visit our website or email us. My name is Leslie Mizrak, and you can reach me at leslie@getcourageous.com. Can't wait to work with all of you daring leaders.